Let's take a look in this thing, huh? Well, first thing I noticed upon opening the box here, this packaging looks awesome. This looks sick. Grab our blade, get a closer look inside here. All right, first things first, we got a little Rough Country Recovery Systems brochure of sorts here. Looks like we have a guide to accessories, winch operation, specifications, all that good stuff. Next, we've got a replaceable clevis hook here, a nice little RC flag on it, which is gonna make this nice and easy to see. But yeah, really big, heavy duty winch clevis. The last little cubby on top appears to have our ground cable, if I had to take a guess. If not, this is our positive cable and we're gonna ground it nearby, but this does look like our ground. Oh, in one more of those cubbies we have our winch mounting hardware. Some nice heavy duty, I believe 1/2 inch or 3/8 bolts. Oh my, this winch is sick. Oh, yeah. Holy cow, this thing is massive. Well, I don't really feel like I need to say this, but this thing looks absolutely killer. This is one badass looking winch. Everything about it, from the decals, I love the red accents. That's gonna go great with Gunner's theme. I love this stamped Rough Country plate right here on both sides. The huge Rough Country logo up top, stamped into the electrical box here. Then we have RC stamped into the little disengage handle, which will allow us to freely pull the line out. RC logos on the caps. Honestly, it's a little Easter egg hunt, seeing how many RC logos we can find on this thing. All the connections are going through a waterproof connection, and I am glad to report that Rough Country has fully waterproofed this winch to an IP67 waterproof and dustproof rating. Now, of course, we only have one motor on this winch, like most winches. This electric motor here on the end cranks out a whopping 5.5 horsepower, and the 3-stage planetary gear train inside of this has a 265-to-1 gear reduction ratio, so that's pretty crazy. And typically this winch would actually come with a steel cable, but you'll probably notice my unit here does not have a steel cable. It has a synthetic rope. Now, the reason being is synthetic rope is actually much stronger per pound than steel cable. And on top of that, the reason I went with synthetic rope over a steel cable is it's a lot safer to use than a steel cable winch. A steel cable winch stores a massive amount of energy in the steel cable line, and if it were to break, that line is gonna go whipping, and it's scary to think about, but it could actually sever one of your limbs. Now, this synthetic rope, the idea behind it is it does not store any energy in the rope. Therefore, when the rope breaks, it should just drop right to the ground. Really, the only slight downside is you have to be a little bit more careful when retracting the rope back into this to make sure it doesn't get tangled. And the synthetic rope requires a little bit more upkeep because it is rope, not steel cable. Now, I don't want to do this too much because I don't have to hand wind a bunch of rope back in, but I've just turned this disengagement lever, which, by the way, is super smooth and satisfying to turn. I've turned this to the disengage position, and this is so smooth to pull this synthetic rope out. Now, I don't want to go too far, roll it back in, but you can see here it's really easy just with my hands to roll this back in. A lot of winches are not so easy to operate, but it looks like this is going to be a good time. We still have a couple more goodies in the box to take a look at, so let's see what those are. Alright, so the second to last item to come out of the box here is our nice Rough Country logoed guide plate for our new synthetic rope. Taking a closer look, this is very nicely machined, super precise holes here, very smooth face, and of course, very nice powder coating as always from Rough Country. They have a very nice finish on this piece. And last but certainly not least, we have our winch controller here from Rough Country. Fairly generic in and out two-way switch here on the handle, though I will say this has a really nice ergonomic grip that has some finger slits, so it does feel really good in the hand here. Button feels quite heavy duty. I doubt this unit's waterproof, but it feels rugged enough. The cable is really thick, nice fat 3-pin connector on the end, and it looks like that should just plug in super easily. Oh yeah, it's a nice snug fit. It looks like my judgment here was correct. This is in fact our ground cable because we already have our positive lead hooked up here. I'm itching to get this thing installed. I'm sure you guys are as well, so let's jump into the installation. Alright, so it looks like we actually have to install our ground cable. So that's gonna go down here. I'm gonna pull this off the edge so you can see a little bit easier. I'm gonna remove this nut right here, keep that connection and that washer on there. But we have to take our nice fat ground cable, and pretty self-explanatory here, but take our ground cable and keep in mind that this is the back of the winch, so you'll probably want your cable facing this way. Get the cable on there. I'm actually gonna pull off this washer and put this little lead back on here along with our big ground, put our washer back on, and with a 13mm, you can tighten this nut right down, and with that, just have to bolt it on and plug it in. So let's bring it over and drop this puppy in. Oh man. Oh yeah, baby. Let's go. So if you turn your release 180 degrees, that will allow us to free spool the line through there. Just a good idea to pull this through before we bolt anything down. Don't want any cables stuck under the winch. Cranking out the lessons, just to learn another thing here. It did say this in the instructions that you want to check all of the connections here and tighten them down. This one was extremely loose, like very loose. So make sure to pull off these rubber boots here and check all of these nuts. I'm gonna pull off all of them right now. It appears to be a 13mm as well. So go over all of the connections on this thing, make sure they're tight. That's gonna be very important, not only to the functionality, but the longevity of your winch. All right, so these electrical connections were actually a 12mm. Tighten them all down. I also tightened this down. Our positive lead was a 14mm. And I'm getting ready to bolt this down, but I just realized another lesson. We might have wanted to put our nuts in those bottom little slots of the winch before dropping it in. So I'm gonna pull it out and show you guys what I'm talking about real quick. That little slot there, as well as this one and the two in the back, are actually gonna accept our nuts. So we'll just pop that in, pop this one in. All right, we'll carefully lower that back down. And then it looks like, funny enough, our entry point for inserting those bolts and tightening them down is actually through the front of the bumper here, or the front and bottom part, that is. But it's kind of funny, these two cutouts are here, and it's like, what's the point of them? Well, I guess it's to put our winch in. All right, I dropped this back in, and let me grab my light to better show you here. But it looks like we have two options. We can either have it set forward just a little bit or set backwards a little bit. I'm opting to push it towards the front of the bumper. I just like the way it looks. Those are kind of our mounting options. I'm gonna work on getting our 4 bolts inserted along with those lock washers and washers. So those back 2 bolts, surprisingly really difficult to get in there. Like, not really difficult, but it's definitely a pain. Over on the left here, you kind of have to reach up behind and kind of in from the side. Over on this side, we have this pump in the way, and you can't really get your hand in there from underneath at all, or from the back. But the one advantage to the right side is it doesn't have the big motor on it blocking our way from above. So over here, you can kind of come underneath, put that bolt in from standing above it. The front 2 were pretty straightforward, and they should be pretty easy to tighten here with the impact. The other 2 in the back, I'm gonna have to use a box wrench. All right, she's all torqued down. Let's pop the hood and scope out where we're gonna run our wires to the battery. So coming underneath the bumper here, looks like probably running the wires down frame rail along with all these other wires is probably our safest bet, and that's usually the way I like to run wires in the engine bay area, or just in general really. I'll tie them to other wire looms because generally speaking these guys are in safe locations and they're not going to get burnt, smushed, or otherwise. But do be really careful about routing your wires. And to give you an idea of where we're trying to go, our battery is of course up here in the passenger side of the engine bay. So we'll want to pull those wires up somewhere in this vicinity here so we can get this winch powered up. Alrighty, so we just got the wires run. I got them all zip tied up under there. Try to show you where I ran them. I want to stay clear of the pulleys, didn't want them getting cut by that. So I brought them up kind of like along the airbox and then along the back side of it here. Came over to the battery. About to pull off these 10mm fasteners right here. Plug in our leads. Andrew and I are gonna toss on the hook. All right, so we just wrapped up wiring. It's looking really clean. It's time to put on our little rope guide here and the included hardware here. This is an 18mm bolt, 19mm nut. We have associated washers and lock washers. So we'll just drop the entire lock washer, washer, and bolt assembly into this rope guide here. I'm actually gonna switch this lock washer onto the back side. We'll leave the big flat washer on the front, but we'll put these guys on the back. Put our rope through it before putting our hook on. Slide that on, and hopefully we can fish our finger in here, get the lock washer on. Actually, maybe we'll use...
I was gonna say either from the top or the bottom, maybe. If you can put it on while you're putting the bumper on, do it before. It makes it a lot easier.
All right, that nut is on. Gonna send her in with the Milwaukee. So I just finessed a box wrench in here, a 19mm box wrench on that nut that was being a little difficult. And we can fish this sucker out of here, hopefully. Definitely a maze working on this thing, but it's possible. Alright, so I'll pull this puppy out a little. What do we think, passenger or driver's side?
I said driver's side. Man.
Yeah.
Man!
Let's go!
Oh, baby!
Woo.
That looks so good, honestly.
We'll pull off our little rough country controller, hop in the Jeep, go find some mud and snow and see if we can get this thing stuck, huh?
Woo! Let's get it, baby.
Alright, so Andrew and I are actually sitting at the editing setup right now. We're just coming to the end of the video, and being like 12 minutes long already, figure it's a good idea to split things up. We're gonna keep this an install vid.
So if you guys want to see our video next week of us testing out the winch, stay tuned.
Leave a like down below, subscribe for more content, and stay tuned for our next video. Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you next time on JD Cars.